So you're probably getting tired of reading, so I'll start talking. The dimmer switch on these trucks is column mounted and actuates with a rod similar to the start switch that runs down the side of the steering column. If you have a non-tilt column, you might be able to get the bolts to take the switch out not too hard, but for my truck you have to drop the fuse panel. What a stupid design that fuse panel is, and I'm going to fix that. Then the steering column, there are two nuts on the bottom of the steering column as opposed to the loose nut on the steering wheel. Also, don't forget to disconnect the tiny little cable for the gear indicator. It hooks to the shifter, and if you pull too hard on it, you're going to break it. There's a nut at the firewall side, that's 3/8, and a bolt 5/16 on the steering wheel side. Of course, they're on the top, and you have the starting switch right next to them, so it makes it really hard to get at them. As with all things Dash, take your time and be patient. I didn't record this part, as I'm sure the cussing would get YouTube's morality people in a knot. There are lots of videos on taking the dash and steering column apart anyways. My truck is a bit odd that it has a tilt column, so the dimmer switch is in a bit different position. It uses a mount plate and is the same as a Chevy or a Jeep of similar vintage with the Shag-and-Awe tilt column. Shag-and-Awe is also a Chevy company. But the connector is different. Apparently the switch for the tilt column is unobtainium for the Dodge, as it has become obsoleted. While not one to scrap a vehicle because of a switch, I started doing some digging and found that the switch was the same as the non-tilt, but the mounting bracket is different. The non-tilt switches is easy to come by. I got mine through Rock Auto. What I did was took the bracket off the original and off the new and swapped them, and this video shows the process. Okay, the plates are held on by a rivet that runs through the switch and into the plate, and then they just sort of pin the end of the rivet over on a machine. It would be nice if they used a screw, but rivets are cheaper, I guess. So I just took them out by grinding out off the end of the rivet on the metal side, and then using a pin punch and a hammer to drive the rivets through. You have to be careful not to damage the switch, and also make sure the switch doesn't pop apart while you're working on it, or the springs will pop out and that's a little hard to put back together. So the whole idea is we're just going to take the new switch, mount it on the old bracket. Okay, first we got to get the rivets out. One of them's being a little stubborn. And out it comes. Alrighty, now that we've got the rivets out, we need something to get them to mount onto the bracket. I measured the rivets. They were 3 millimeters, or about the same nominal size as a number 4 screw. So these are panhead screws. Sorry it doesn't show up in the video too well. And nuts. They're 1 inch long. Number 440, 1 inch long panhead screw. The heads don't stick up. They're about the same as the rivet that was in there, so that's good. You're not going to get any interference. And they don't stick out too far on the back, but you'll see in a minute that we are going to grind them off anyways. But simple operation to, well, except for the fact I grabbed the wrong screwdriver. Because we're in Canada, it's a Robertson head on it, and kind of a little tricky. They're tiny little things, so I went and got the right screwdriver for it. There we go. And just hold the nut with a pair of pliers and give it a twist. You don't have to be too brutal in twisting it or putting it in. It's not a head bolt, it's just a screw to hold it on. And then you get the other one in. Now, I had to use brass nuts because that's all they had. And there we go, tighten it up. And there you go. So they stick out a little bit. So I just took it into the bench grinder, took the ends off them, which helps also retain the nut because of course it burrs it over. And just making sure that they're tight. And then I just peened them a little bit with a hammer too, just to make sure that they're not going to come loose. The problem is if they were to come loose is the switch is actually held together by the rivets, or in this case now the screws, so you wouldn't want that popping apart inside your dash. So there we go, all good. Checking it. Now you may wonder what the little metal clip is for that comes with it. This little thing here, it's so you can preload it. You push in and put the little clip in, and that holds the spring down, so when you mount it, it can, and then pull the pin out, it springs back against the rod and helps preload it. So that's the main idea, is to preload it a little bit so that once it's mounted in the vehicle, that as soon as you touch the switch, it works properly. Okay, here's the old switch. It's fairly straightforward. You can see there's a little contact for where I put my finger for the flash, for the when you pull on the lever momentarily. And this little plastic thing here, it's got some brass contacts in it. It fits into the housing. And when you pull on the arm, it toggles it back and forth between high and low beam. What I think happened with this one is there's supposed to be a spring, a return spring in it, and it had popped out somehow. Also, after 30 odd years in the truck, probably be a good thing to replace anyways. Yeah, it just fits in there. Like I said, that's why you want to be careful not to let the two pieces, the top cover and the switch, come apart, because there's a bunch of little pieces. Here we are looking down the hole where it's going to go. Sorry, the video is not the best, but you can see the place where the bolt mounts in, and then at the back there's a stud with a nut on it. Also holds your ignition switch, so don't get carried away with taking too many things apart. Just showing the rod that actuates the headlights. The one on the top is the one that actuates your starter switch, and it goes to the ignition tumbler. It's a real pain to replace, ask me. Here we are, just testing. We got headlights, we got the flash, and we got high beams and flash. So all working back the way it's supposed to be. And here's the jumper I made up for testing purposes, but it would work as well if you need to use it in the emergency to get your lights to work if the dimmer switch broke. Yeah, that's the video. Hope you liked it, and be sure to hook up the little thing for the drive indicator on the dash when you put the steering column back up. A lot of people forget that one. Thank you. Bye-bye.